Hey, welcome in, Puckheads. I'm your buddy Choppadong. This is the January 22nd version of NHL DFS Diary. We're going to go through the slate today. We're going to talk player pool. We're going to go through a little game I like to call buyers and sellers. We're also going to pick which offenses we may want to key on a little bit more than others, talk a little bit of puck today. But most importantly, I am a coach and contributor inside DFSArmy.com, a one-stop shop for anything daily fantasy sports. And I would really appreciate it. Run down to the comments section. If you're looking for a community such as ours, join us today. DFSArmy.com. Use coupon code CHOP, CHOP. Trigger the 20% off discount and start growing your game. I'm issuing challenges inside my coaching room all the time now where we're talking about basketball, PGA, NFL. It doesn't really matter. Whatever sport it is, I'll take you on. I want to do it for free because I'm not into spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars, a dollar at a time, to beat up on the guys that are my membership. Not that I would even beat up on you. You'd beat me as often as I beat you. We just end up paying rake. Most importantly, we're using these contests and challenges as reviews. What type of lineup do you want to build? Cash, GPP, a league, a hybrid type lineup in between? What types of contests are you focused on? What types of games do you play? And how can we make you better by discussing what happened yesterday and where we went wrong and maybe where we went right? Let's talk about that kind of stuff and get better together. That's the whole idea. That's the community we're building. Let's dive in, talk a little bit of NHL starting right now. I have been starting lately at Fantasy Labs, which is fine. You can pay for their premium stuff if you want to, but I like their what is this called? Their team ratings tool. It's interesting. The last 3 slates I've been using this thing, it has been absolutely crap. But it makes too damn much sense to be wrong. It has to be a small sample size. When I'm looking at the teams that are expected to shoot pucks on net, expected to score goals, expected to score fantasy points, I mean, seriously, how can that be wrong? But it has been dead wrong. 75% of these top 4 or 5 teams I've been focusing on have sucked, and it's been really, really funny to watch. I've still managed to cash a few times without it because I'll spot a couple of GPP type things, and I'm not afraid to run GPP lineups in cash contests. So that's one way to look at it. When we're looking at the overall rating on the slate today, the top 3-4 teams, we go down to, drops off to a 60 and a 62. Let's just focus on the top 4. San Jose is interesting on a back-to-back across the country. I don't know. New York Islanders is definitely a team targeting Chicago. Arizona's in an interesting spot targeting Ottawa, and Calgary should be a little bit higher up the slate in my opinion, but Carolina can be a defensive-oriented team. So maybe that's why they're being suppressed a little bit. If I look at the fantasy points being scored, then we see the same, just a different order. That's important to note. Goals scored, the all-important goal scored metric. We can even go down to number 5 here. Edmonton's supposed to score some goals tonight in Detroit. Same 4 teams. So we're getting a pretty clear picture of what it is that we want to focus on. And when I look at the defensive goals against for the month, I want to target these teams. I want to target Chicago. They've given up a lot of goals this month. I want to target Edmonton's defense. But look at the difference between 4.27 and 3.7. That's almost a half a goal. You're getting onto a pretty big gap difference. So the rest of these teams down here kind of splitting hairs. I mean, 3.54, 3.42, who the hell cares? That's just giving up about 3.5 a game. Nothing real significant in there. But I would definitely be targeting Chicago. That's why New York ranks high on this list. So that's just typically what I'm going to be looking for on today's slate. Calgary, New York Islanders. Let's go back to the fantasy points here. Islanders, Calgary. I'm not believing the Sharks. And Arizona is a little bit of a sneaky spot. I like Washington for GPPs. Detroit, maybe not so much. Carolina's intriguing because Calgary's been giving up goals lately too. If you wanted to be ultimate GPP, can anyone really not see Chicago actually having a good game once in a while and popping off against an Islanders squad? The Islanders have been good defensively lately, but I can see it. And in a small slate like this, when we know where the chalk should be, which is in New York and in Calgary, then we can get off of that stuff, take some pretty good shots at some other things, hopefully pan out and win some tournaments. That's kind of the idea. So let me go ahead and close this out. We'll go to the research station here, and we'll review really quickly. San Jose is on a back-to-back. Washington in the last 10 games, scoring not really scoring a lot. Not really giving up a lot, but not really scoring a lot. That, to me, not giving up a lot, kind of puts San Jose in an interesting spot, being that they've scored a ton. I just have a funny feeling they're tired. They've played a lot of games recently. They only scored 2 games last night. Or 2 goals last night. I think they're ready to go home. It's a total GPP narrative. It's not something I would run in cash, but I just cannot get on board with the numbers today. When I look at Arizona, I'm looking more for season numbers, 2.6 versus lately 2.6 on the road, 2.9 at home, or I mean in the last 10, giving up some goals. I don't know why I kind of like Arizona tonight. Probably because Ottawa's been giving up a crap load of goals, and there's a lot of value in Arizona. But I would say this: I'd keep them to one-off type plays. I wouldn't be stacking Arizona and GPPs. I'd use them as value punts. Because there is value in that lineup, and that's where I would be using it. It's how I would be using it. New York Islanders tonight, of course, they should be registering a little bit high here, and mostly it's because Chicago's given up goals. They're not really giving up goals in return, though, so that makes Chicago kind of tough. Looking at the Detroit Red Wings, giving up goals, that puts Edmonton in an okay spot. This would be a real sneaky GPP play. A lot of people will maybe run to a Connor McDavid, but I don't think people are going to continually stack this line expecting this game to blow up. And we can see here that it might. I'm not going to say that it is, but it is possible and it might. Detroit has been giving up the goals, especially last 10 on the road at 3.7. Looking here, Carolina, not terrible defensively, not great, but not terrible. They are scoring some goals lately, so maybe this is a sneaky shootout type of game. I don't think a lot of people are going to be putting a lot of faith in Carolina. One of our members asked a question today about, hey, who should I, if I stack the Flames, who should I run it back with Carolina with? And I'm going to tell you this before we move into the players. You don't necessarily need to game stack in hockey because the analogy that I used is there are a lot more 7-2 hockey games than there are 50-13 football games. Football games shoot out, and we think about running it back with a player like I'm going to run, Brady and Gronk, and then I'm going to run it back with Gurley or some crap like that. Or we're thinking, or not Gurley, but say, Damian Williams, to hit a sore note for people that are already tilting probably over that game. The idea is in football, the shootout typically happens when a quarterback's having a great game. It's because the other team is keeping pace with them. Basketball can be the same way, but in hockey, it's teams don't really go up 5 goals and then just take their starters out. They still run the same lines. They still keep playing. You see a lot of those types of blow. You don't see a lot of 6-4 stuff. You see some 7-2 stuff, some 6-4, some 4-3, whatever. So I mean, yeah, it works, but you're going to see more of those blowouts, and they're less of a factor DFS wise. You don't need to have that other team pushing the Calgary Flames to have Calgary put out a lot of fantasy points that night. The idea, in my opinion, is to focus on nailing a couple of offenses. If it happens to be Carolina, great. But I'm not going to force Carolina guys into my lineup just because I think that I want a lot of Flames and therefore I need to run it back with somebody. That's a little bit of overkill. So hopefully you can pick up on that little bit of a nuance there. Rittich is going to be your goalie tonight. He's going to be one of the popular ones. I think Koskinen is interesting. But if I'm really, really looking at it, I think Lehner is your cash type goalie tonight, going up against the Blackhawks with the Islanders playing well lately. So that would be the idea. As far as a GPP goalie is concerned, I'll throw you a Braden Holtby. Because again, I'm just banking on this team coming out flat, Holtby getting the win. If they're really, really flat, you might get a sneaky little sneaky shutout. Not like Holtby's been lighting the net on fire this year, but on a one-time only situation, I think he's playable. Let's run into the skaters tab. Let's play a little buyers and sellers. Maybe see if we can't figure out where some of the value on the slate's going to be. But the way I'm going to determine buyers and sellers first is I'm going to sort here by the 10-day Fanduel points average. You can do DraftKings. That works just as fine. And when it sorts out the entire player pool, I'm going to be watching this 5-game average. 47 over 40. Patrick Kane, buy. 24 over under 28. It's pretty close. Not a hardcore sell indicator. 31 over 26. Giordano, buy. 18 under 27. Eric Carlson, sell. See what I'm doing? I'm using this metric again, which I showed you the other day. And I don't know if I showed you in hockey or in basketball, but I'm using the last 10 games average as a steadier baseline. And you could use 15 or 20 or whatever you can find on whatever site you use research for. And then the last 5 games, last 3 games, last 6, doesn't really matter, but use a bigger baseline with a steadier, harder to move the line, and then a shorter one that's easier to move the line. And when the short term crosses the long term, buy. When the short term crosses the long term the other direction, sell. What you're looking at is DFS pricing cannot keep up with the every single game, game up, game down, game up, game down, the yo-yo that the shorter sample sizes can. So this can tip off hotter players where pricing hasn't quite caught up yet. People that are outperforming their current pricing structure, that tells us we should be buying those players because DFS is all about buying players on sale. How do you find a player on sale? You find one who is projected to score more points or who lately has been scoring more points than his price would suggest he should. And you get off of them when they become overpriced, okay? So that's what we're doing here. But when the 5-game average crosses the 10-game average, we're going to buy and we're going to sell accordingly. So if I look at Brent Burns, 15 over the 25, sell under the 25. I mean, 26 over 24 is about the same. 24, 20, 28 over 23, Sebastian Aho. If it's the correct one, you see them listed in 2 spots here. One is New York Islanders defenseman. You got to determine if it's the Carolina centerman. If it is, buy. Should be. Otherwise, we'd have heard of the other guy making noise because he should be dirt cheap. 27 over 26, DeBrincat buy. That's interesting because now you got Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat. There's a contrarian GPP type of stack for you tonight. May or may not pan out, but over the last 5 games, it's panned out more than once. 20 over 23, 8 over 9 under 19. Oscar Klefbom, probably not even playing right now. I think he's been hurt lately, but if he is playing, probably a sell. 17 about the same, 22, 12. 18, Anders Lee. All of us, where are you gone? He was hot for a while. Look at the sell indicator. 12.5 in the last 5, over an 18 over the last 10. Sell, sell, sell. Until he turns around and comes back. He's overpriced right now for 12 points per game because he rode the 18-point game streak up in his pricing a little bit. 16, 17, and 9.7 and a 16 over Barzil. Sell. Ooh, this is now okay. Now here's what I'm seeing. This is what would be really interesting. New York Islanders should be chalk tonight. We're taking on a team that should suck. But what we're seeing is the opposite is possible in that the New York Islanders are coming off of their high with their fantasy points per game. Therefore, they're a little bit overpriced. And the Chicago Blackhawks are starting to they're continuing to push that short-term average higher and that long-term average higher, which means they're still a little bit underpriced. Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat will be contrarian tonight, so everybody will be focused on the New York Islanders, but it should not surprise you if Chicago flips it on their head and Kane and DeBrincat have good games and the New York Islanders come out a little bit flat and the chalk just dies tonight. You might want to throw a little Chicago stack into a GPP, a single entry GPP for $1 or something, just in case, because this might be the only place you hear that that's possible. And I just showed you in the numbers why. So let's sort on through now. And let's go a little bit more into the value type of plays for tonight. Since we've seen a little bit of the buyers and sellers, you can see how to use the tool in that regard. And you give those guys a little bit of an extra bump. The other thing that I will do is I will kick over here. I can look at a floor like shot on goal and blocked shot floor. I can also sort by descending order. On the 5-game sample size, pick the hot players, the guys that are producing right now. Hockey's a game of momentum. Baseball's a game of momentum. Oftentimes guys heat up and they stay hot for a little while. You can ride that train until it bucks you. I want to see the floor come with it, though. I love the 20-shot floor, somewhere around there. So these top 3 guys, the 22 here, and Dylan Larkin. Oh, little contrarian Detroit play. Derek Stepan in Arizona. Come on down here, 18 for Nick Backstrom. These are guys that I'm starting to look at a little bit. Is that Anima? No, that is Glendening, if he's playing right now. These are the types of floor plays that with the points are actually very, very good, very, very safe plays. If there's such a thing as cash in NHL, a cash safe player, which there's really not, but if there is such a thing, you're going to find it in high floor, high shot volume, some blocked shots, and production. Find guys producing that over 3, 5, 10-game samples, and they're as cash safe as you're ever going to find in the sport. Scroll back over, and what we're going to look for is value. Who's out of place? These should be all your $7,000 and $8,000 players. And I scroll down a little bit. There's 6,900 Dylan Larkin, 5,200 in Stepan, 3,500 in Walmart. That's an interesting one for Carolina. Serves on second line in the second power play unit. Where's Walmart? Being that his price is way, way out of line with what it should be, Walmart, 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 Walmart. Last 10 games, 11 points per game, 36. That's Stepan. 8.2 and 16. Come over here and it's still only an 8 instead of the 16. That's not a very high floor, and a 13.9 means he's been getting lucky lately. So let's cancel the Walmart call. It's not safe. Hurdle 62. Okay, 4,500 for Dylan Strome. There's another Chicago guy down there on that second line with Patrick Kane. Another cheaper guy, Frans Nielsen. There's not a lot in the center spot tonight. Okay? We may be paying up a little bit. If instead I look at the left wing and the right wing together, this is going to take a little bit. So we'll fill the dead air with either the Jeopardy theme song, maybe something else. While we're waiting, there we got it. Oh, more messages, more coaching to go do. Looking over here at Patrick Kane, we know he was high on the list. I've sorted off by, hopefully it's still sorted. Sorry to make you dizzy there. Nope, got to resort it. I didn't do it from the, if you click them all off, turn them all white, then you can kind of wholesale make those sorting changes. If not, you got to go position by position since that's the way I was doing it. But look at the big lead Patrick Kane has over the next best winger. Next best winger happens to be DeBrincat. Would you have guessed in a million years Patrick Kane, Alexander DeBrincat are the two top scoring fantasy wings on tonight's slate over their last 5-game averages? Would you have guessed that? Once again, you heard it here first. Johnny Hockey ain't got nothing on those guys. Actually, he does. He's pretty cash safe. Matthew Tkachuk, there's 2 Calgary guys. Nugent Hopkins, Evander Kane has been great lately. Niederreiter, Clutterbuck, Garland. Let's go looking at some of these guys. I'm looking for those floors. Those shot there. The floors are there. Floors disappeared down here on a Sam Bennett. And there's a floor there without any production with Bobby Ryan. A little bit of a floor in Timo Meier for the minutes that he's getting. A little bit of production, so not a terrible play there. Just scrolling over. Out of place salaries. Matt Tkachuk, 6,900. Oh, 6,600 to Brinkett. Probably one of your better value plays on the slate tonight. That is very. I don't like the way the Islanders are playing right now. They're very, very tight defensively. They're very, very shot suppressive. But in a GPP, when you're going against a tough matchup like that, you save it more for GPPs. Very big value play in a GPP scenario. 5,800 Ryan Nugent Hopkins. 4,700 Niederreiter. 3,000 Clutterbuck. Interesting. $3,000. New York Islanders, 4th line Clutterbuck. If he's playing tonight, it's not the worst punt because he's been producing, so he should maybe continue producing. However, if he fails, which he's going to fail a lot on that 4th line, doesn't hurt you. This is an interesting salary saver, being that it's right down there on league minimum. Okay? Connor Garland, 3,900, great value play most nights lately. Sam Bennett has been producing, not shooting. It's fluky when you're producing and not shooting. So again, we're looking a little bit weak for the value plays on tonight's slate. I would put a lot of value personally on a DeBrincat. Clutterbuck may be very important. Most people will miss that play. If he scores a goal, it's a pure bonus. If he puts 3 shots on goal, 4 shots on goal, pure bonus. What else can you ask for out of a punt play? If he happens to do something, great. If not, you're making sure you take your goose egg real dirt cheap so that you can then get from 5,800 up to 6,600 and get something worth it. Kicking back over to defense. We already know the offense. Trying to put Calgary in play, trying to put the New York Islanders in play. Won't be surprised if that game flip-flops, but trying to focus on, some of those plays as much as we can. This game is kind of this slate's getting a little weird the more we kind of start looking at it, which is odd. I thought it was going to be very, very cut and dry. Edmonton might be a little sexy tonight too. We haven't even talked about him. We haven't seen him. Nobody in the industry is probably going to be talking about him. 31.7 Giordano. Hello. Buy signal. 20.8 down here. Here's your shot floors. Your shot floors should be huge for defensemen because they also block shots. CC, another big one. Scrolling down here, 26 in Shabbat. Another big one. 28 in Mnemonic. That's a lot for a cheaper play. So I'm going to scroll over here and look at Mnemonic. He should be a little bit out of price. 3,900. Now he's down here with some cheapies. I'd like to see him ranked a little higher. But I come up here, 66 for Giordano is a big price to ask tonight, especially when we're searching for value. Australia at 4,000 is your second best defenseman on the slate tonight in terms of last 5-game average. Pretty cheap too, 4,200 for CC. You run Australia and CC, you can call defense done. You're skipping Shabbat, you're skipping Giordano. Those are tough, tough guys to skip. But when you need the value, you might need the value. You run those out there with a Clutterbuck, run those out there with another deeper value play that maybe is more, has more production power to it than a Clutterbuck, and maybe you can make the rest of your lineup work. You're going to be really hard pressed to get those Calgary guys in your lineup tonight, though. Definitely going to be hard pressed for that. Slavin, don't know if I would use him if Carolina's going to keep up with Calgary, and Calgary's doing the scoring. It's kind of more of a Dougie Hamilton day. A little bit of a GPP narrative. Dougie Hamilton was a flame. So maybe looking to come back to town and, damage his old team, make them sad they let him go or traded him, or I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if he even left on a bitter note. That works a lot better on bitter note departures, but still, anybody wants to give it to their old team a little extra special. 3,600 for Orlov. That's not a terrible play if you're using Washington tonight, being that he's been producing lately. And he's, again, salary's a little out of whack with the pricing. I'm seeing a lot of $4,000 and $5,000 guys below these 3,300 and low $4,000 guys. That's what leads me to believe they're tremendous value on the slate. Now, you need to check the matchup, or you need to check your angle of attack tonight. Because, again, the chalk should be on the Islanders. The chalk should be on the Flames. That opens up the door for a little bit. Chalk might even be on San Jose, but the door opens up a little bit for, Chicago's going to be contrarian. Detroit's going to be contrarian. Edmonton sounds like they'll be a little bit contrarian. Ottawa's going to be contrarian. If you run a chalk stack and a contrarian stack, then you've done yourself enough to set yourself apart. If you run a fourth line player, a lot of times you set yourself apart. If he has a big game, you're going to sit pretty on the leaderboard, even if you have a chalky lineup otherwise. That's kind of the idea between cash games, hybrids, and GPPs, in that you may not want to separate yourself off the herd in cash games, but you definitely want to in GPPs. You don't want to go overboard with it. That's been the echo of the theme of the videos today. So that's something just to bear in mind. We've pointed you in a couple of directions. Hopefully, we've gotten you pointed a little bit of logic behind it, cut down your player pool to where you can use these tools to really turbo through and create some competitive lineups tonight. Are there any real bold calls in here? Probably not. Other than maybe I'd watch out for Chicago. My bold call, and I will do this, is run a Chicago, a Kane and DeBrincat stack and then make it work. Stack against Lehner, because if Lehner's the chalk goalie and you stack against him, and Chicago does the damage, you kind of double dip the parlay because everybody running Lehner and New York is getting crushed, and your Chicago guys are the ones that are doing the damage, and they're on your roster as well. So that's probably the bold call. The other stuff, is kind of going to be hit or miss. I wouldn't even expect the Chicago thing to really pan out tremendously well tonight, but it only takes once in a GPP. If you can find a decent-sized GPP and get the reward for the risk you're taking, you'd be a little bit surprised at how often it works in hockey. Hockey is a contrarian sport, just like baseball. The chalk fails more often here than anywhere else. So don't be afraid to take those risks. Don't be afraid to fade Calgary because they're pricey or because everybody's going to be on them, and look for another creative way to put together a good lineup. On a 4-game slate, if the chalk fails, something else did well, and there's a good chance that you hit it, as opposed to a 10-game slate where 3 or 4 teams have to fail. Tonight, only 1 or 2 really have to fail for you to have a great shot at winning a GPP. Hopefully you use some of this information. Like and subscribe to the video. Give me a share out on Twitter, with a little bit of a retweet or something like that. Help me spread the word. And most importantly, come in here, get some coaching, get more detailed information, a little bit of one-on-one or group type help in building the proper lineups so that we can get you pointed back on the right track. That's the whole idea of what it is that we do. But you need to use the link in the comment section, dfsarmy.com. Use coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, for that 20% off discount. And hopefully I see you inside talking hockey today. Take care, guys. We are out of here.